Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie Stuck here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And welcome to our 38th, if I've counted them properly, 38th AutoHotkey webinar. We got to have a plan for our 50th, man. I mean, it's coming up.
Yeah, within a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's our contact info, and by the way, so I'm recording this, so these will be available later. Also, I'll send out an email with a link to everything that we cover, so don't worry too much about what's in it, because we'll send it out probably tomorrow. Usually when I get it out. The ground rules, because we had 40, it looks like we got at least, I'd say, 20 people here, roughly. Everyone starts off muted besides Jackie and I, because it is funny, I was on a call the other night, and I was trying to explain to them, they were talking about having webinars. So I'm like, look, the second you get over 2 people, no matter how good they are at talking together, it's so hard to not talk over each other. With 2 people, it can flow. After 2, it's really tough. So we mute everybody, but if you have a question, use the chat, or just type in the chat that you have a question, you want to ask a question, and Jackie or I will unmute you. And so also, while we're doing this webinar, Jackie or I are watching the chat. We may not interrupt the person presenting right away, but we'll make note of it to bring up your question if the person leading the conversation doesn't see it. With that said, just some announcements. So actually, and I think last month we talked about it, and it wasn't on there, but we had our gender and programming talk. That was interesting, I thought. Also, should you actually tell your bosses you're using AutoHotkey, or should you just get more work done and not let them know how? And then we talked some about security and plain text files.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, there are 2 Udemy courses, and I made a special coupon code for anyone watching this. So you'd go to Udemy. You can just go to Udemy, find the AutoHotkey course, and then put in AHK-webinar, and that will give you a good discount. I think it's $9.99 for either course. So if you're interested, check it. This is a very intro course. I've tried working on the intermediate, but I got a lot going on at the moment, so I just don't have time for it. And hot screens are by and far the easiest, simplest way to start being more productive.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into the script highlight. So we like to demonstrate a script. In this one, you've probably seen we've done 2 webinars, and I know both Jackie and I have done other videos on web scraping. But what I didn't like about the old tool, let me bring over IE and start the web browser tool. So this is the newer version. And if I come into, let's see, what can I go to that's not, there we go. So, and of course it doesn't have, you know what, I know on my site, I have a bunch of classes on my site. So if you come in here, come on, let's go down here. Of course, there's no class there. Let me move the button. Let me move that out of the way. There we go. So class name is what Jackie and I use a lot now, because not everything has an ID or a name. And yet class name, more often than not, is unique. And so I would always come in here and find, oh, look, class equals post form, ID is cat. That's funny. It's, ID, that's interesting. Name, cat, there it is. I'm sorry, post form. So what I did was I had Maestria break it out for me. In this edit field here is now class name. So it's much more convenient. The other thing that I added was, if you go to a page that has frames, like this is under a frame, notice it's in red. And so that is because it's so important, right? If you're connecting to a frame, you really got to change how you're doing it. And I know I've wasted a lot of time trying to connect to a web page, and now it's usually like a 2-minute thing. Like, why isn't this? Oh, wait, is there frames? But initially, I wouldn't pay much attention to this, and I thought having it a different color would be very helpful. I also increased the size of the fonts a bit. Jackie, do you use this much, or do you just use the built-in tools?
I'd say originally the iLearner tool, I use that quite a lot. But as as both IE and Chrome, for that matter, have included better and better developer tools,
Yep.
it's not much that I start them anymore. But again, there might be situations where I might do it. It depends on what I'm doing.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I can right click on something and say inspect element. Where is it? Here we go. Now Chrome, I think, does a better job than IE, but all the information is here. It's just there's so much information, and when you're new to it, it's a bit overwhelming. And also, once you open this, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but I don't think you can still connect to the page, and so if you try running it on your script on the page with this open, it won't work. At least that's the errors I've had.
It's too. I wouldn't be able to actually say no, but I think you can still connect to the page, but it might change something that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, that is actually, is it here? Yeah, I think I'll put this in the chat if anybody wants it. They can download it.
Yeah.
All right. So today we were going to talk about finding an image, and usually when you do something like finding an image, you want to either click it or maybe next to it send some text to it or something like that. It's not some people you're just finding the image, but usually you want to do more. In the sense of you want to do more, first Jackie and I want to make sure we say, look, and a lot of different things we talk about. This list was borrowed from our webinar back in March of 2017. God, that seems like it was forever ago. But we're talking about the preferred order of approaches you would use for connecting to a program, for lack of a better term. And if you can connect to it via COM or the component object model, that's the number one for me. And then there's the UI automation interface, which is also like the MSA or the accessibility viewer, right? It's a good solid approach. Connecting to controls or sending post messages or using the older menu items or doing DLL calls. Those are all very reliable, very consistent, very fast approaches. And then sometimes you really want to do something that's just on the clipboard. Great, that's another way you can do what you want there. And then finally, as a last resort, we talk about sending keystrokes and mouse clicks to something. So it's not that, like, I know Jackie and I we both do it, but it's not usually where we start. So if anyone new to the webinar stuff is watching this, there are much more efficient, faster, more reliable ways often to do stuff. And I just want to caveat this whole thing before we go down the rest of stuff.
Yeah, I'd even say that when starting out, this list is almost flipped. Not that it is, but yeah.
Right.
Most people start with some sending of some strokes, some mouse moves and stuff like that, and maybe some Windows manipulation with Windows active and WinWait active and stuff like that, and then they might get into using the clipboard to send their text instead of sending it, and different types of stuff like that, and then they might move into controls, getting stuff directly from a Windows control. And then later they might learn about COM or Microsoft accessibility and stuff like that. But yeah.
Maybe we should at some point create a few slides, because I think you're right as far as we could rate these things on reliability, maybe something on speed. Then there's your knowledge as a developer to how to use them, right? And I think you're right, absolutely right, as far as it's not hard to figure out how to send mouse clicks at a given location, or sending keystrokes. It's just sadly not as reliable. And honestly, like they'll get down on AutoHotkey for stuff, and that's because they're sending keystrokes and they think that's all it does, and I'm like, there's so many other ways you can do things. It's ridiculous.
I'd say that last week I saw a demo of UiPath, robotic automation software,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't get to see the code. I didn't get to ask the persons that made it or anything like that. I just saw a demo
Yeah.
made in front of a group of people, and to me, it looked like all it was doing was opening the program, making sure it had a specific size and a specific place on screen, and then it started moving the mouse and thereby input focus, and then it typed in the fields and it moved the mouse and clicked on something else, and that was what it was doing. Uh,
Oh,
and this is an expensive
yeah.
enterprise level
Yeah.
automation tool
Yeah.
where I was kind of I was taken back by that and thought, whoa, really? Is that where we are?
I asked a friend of mine that is, used to work, he still does, but he was installing Automation Anywhere and tools like this. And I said, hey, for when because he's forced to use it, right? He can't use AutoHotkey. So I
Mm,
said, when you're implementing these, what percent of the time are you doing like a mouse, an image search and a mouse clicking kind of thing versus connecting to controls or using COM or something like that? And he said like 85% of the time, those tools, because they don't have a lot of that robustness built into them, right? So that's what they have is good solid image searching capabilities and finding, but it's really, if you had the COM object or controls and the program you're connected to had controls in it that you could connect to, like that would be so much more consistent, reliable.
yeah, I found out that the reason they had a speed gain from actually using this robot, as they said, was because it was put on a remote desktop, and it was doing the work that a human would do at the speed that a human did it.
Just round the clock.
Uh,
Yeah.
just it was just doing it while another person was doing something else. So per se, it wasn't faster. It was just doing the job without a human, and that was all. And okay, most people who use AutoHotkey, they actually do it on their own workstation, so they might need to actually have that extra level because they might need to do something else while the script was running. Whereas with this very, very expensive enterprise thing, we'll just give it its own workstation.
We'll
And
buy
then
another computer.
then it becomes quite easy. Then you don't really have to have a need for.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's funny or
Mm.
sad, I think. It also is very sad just to say, which we know, right? But humans are so inefficient. We get distracted. We're doing other stuff. We take breaks. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get moving forward here. The very first one is built-in image search, and Jackie was reminding me that actually there's a pixel search as well. Or I shouldn't say reminded me because I don't think I ever knew it was there. But image search, I'm going to demonstrate the code here in a minute. The big pro is that it's built into AutoHotkey, right? Which is great because it's out of the box. Again, like other languages, like Python. And if Chris, I see Chris Nelson here. If he's the Python guru that I met from Python, then you should let me know. But it doesn't have a lot with it, right? So image search is one of the things built into AutoHotkey. It's great. So it's very handy in that. Now, one of the drawbacks of it is you have to have a local file, and it accepts GIFs, JPEG, icons. I don't know what CUR and ANI images are, but BMPs that are 16 plus bits. Do you know, are those common images, Jackie? CUR and ANI? I've never heard of them.
Oh, um, CUI, that must be cursor. So like a cursor image file
Hmm.
thing, and ANI. I'm not sure about that one. Oh, some kind of,
Animated cursor is what
yeah,
they say.
sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay, I've
Okay.
never heard of either, but you have to have a local file of what you're searching for, which isn't the end of the world, right? Especially if you have tools to help do it, but it's just an added step you have to do.
Mhm.
Um, I have not had great experiences using image search. I have found it for me, and maybe it's because I've never looked into it enough to understand how to play with the fuzzy kind of, what'd you call it, Jackie? The gradient? No, the color. matching.
The variation, color
Yes.
variation.
Thank you. Yeah. But I have had some really not fun events trying to use it. Let me go ahead and comment this out and this out. So in my script here, this is what we're running on the other one. We're going to look for this B icon, which happens to be right here. Actually, let me click it and move it. Oh, it is here. Okay, good. It usually opens on the other screen. So apparently this, you're gonna set the coordinates to use the window found. Is that right? So it looks, that's what this is doing.
Court mode pixel. I'd say I'd have to actually look that up because it's too long ago that I actually looked at court mode.
So it's relative to the screen rather than the active window.
With court mode pixel, is that correct? It might be. You might be right because I think it has a second parameter, doesn't it? Or is that just me remembering wrong?
Yeah. Well, let's hey, you know what? It's relative.
It does have a.
So you can change what you're deciding to be relevant.
So pixel is effects, pixel get color, pixel search, and image search. So you're of course right. And when you put it there, code mode pixel, you're probably just telling it to go to default, which should be window, I believe, is the default.
Screen.
Can you?
Yeah.
Is screen default or is window default?
I think it
defaults to screen. Yeah. If omitted, it defaults to screen,
okay.
Which was what you wanted it to be anyway.
Okay.
You probably wouldn't need to put it there,
Gotcha.
the line, only if you had a need to actually change it from screen to something else.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't use this. I'd say at all, not anymore. So anyway, we're going to look for this icon, and then what I liked, and we have a webinar talking about this too, the different error levels, right? And if it's error level 2, that means like if I actually change this file to something else and I try to run it, it's going to come up and say, hey, the source image, this image doesn't exist. So don't waste your time. It's not that we couldn't find the image on the screen. We couldn't find your local file.
Yeah.
And then if it comes back with a 1, it couldn't find it. And then otherwise, go ahead and we're going to tell you where it found it. And then because it's going to find the very top left pixel, is that right, of the image? But of course, if you click there, it might not actually click the icon, which down here is a link to a folder, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to pad it a little bit to the left, a little down. So let's give this a run here. So it found it, and it's telling us where it found it. And I hit OK. And there it moved my mouse and clicked it for me. So it's still not hard, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say, as Jackie was pointing out, there are some things you can configure on it. But I didn't personally like having to have the local file and then having to build in my logic of what I want to do. But it's not terrible.
It is good for something that's built in. It's the same as every other command. You can take it further.
Right. So now let's move on to our next one. Is that running? No, that's not. Okay. So the next one we were talking about was the FineText function, and it's pretty cool. I've been talking about this for quite a while. It doesn't need a local file. You can find the newer version. This is actually the original version. There's a newer version which finds multiple images, multiple instances of the pixel groupings. It's easy to create a simple search script. It's very fast. We were not quite sure if it does fuzzy matching or not, and Jackie's played a lot with this function, and yet it's still, unfortunately, Feiyu, he's Japanese, is that right? I think,
or Chinese, either one. I'm not sure.
But he doesn't speak good English, and so it's I don't want to say been a problem, but it's been a hindrance to getting clarity of exactly what things do what. what I do, let's go ahead and fire it up. So I have a hotkey for that, of course, too. So we're going to launch it. Mine's a little different because I added a specify area in this, but so it's not here. But it's pretty cool because I can come here and say capture. Let's say I wanted to look for this. Great. Oh, you know what? I didn't mention something else, but now I need to choose. This is one of the things I don't like about it. Like it's not clear. I'm going to hit gray, but I would have to pick and choose which one of these, and then I can adjust where I'm searching, or I can hit auto once I get it closer, and I can say, okay. Actually, let me say this is going to be no as a comment. Okay, and now I can actually. What's cool is I can click here and see what it is I'm looking for, right? And then if I test it, it's going to say it found it, and then it's going to move my mouse to where it found it. In this initial version, there wasn't a way to find multiple instances of it. In the new version, you can, and I think that way you use the index and say, okay, I want to get the third, item I found. But also there's no way to on the forum and in my videos, people written me, they're like, well, it doesn't click it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not part of it. You have to write code, down in here somewhere and stick it into your code and then run it there. But of what you want it to do. Do you want it to click it? If you want it to send text to it, there's nothing for that. You have to write that on your own as well. But so it's a cool tool. It's very fast, and man, I can use it very, very quickly. But it for some people, they're still a little confused. Did you have any thoughts on that, Jackie? Are you there? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the complexity is we're working with the pixels and of course, all of a sudden working with the function. Most people that come to this stage and get intrigued by FineText might not be that knowledgeable in AutoHotkey yet. So they might have used some commands or sent some keys or done some clipboard things, but most of them haven't seen complex function use, which is what the example that FineText gives you. It shows you a variable loaded with the image data, and then it shows you a function call to FineText, and then it uses what that function returns. And again, those are quite you need to have some level of knowledge at least to understand that right off the bat.
So this is the newer version that finds multiple instances, but like I said, there's so many options in here, and I don't I was just going. I always use this gray 2, I should say, and it's funny because I reached out to Maestrith and I'm like, hey, I want you to take this function and strip out all the all of this, set this as default and remove it. I don't care about the split add. I read into that and I'm like, man, holy cow, there's so much stuff. And don't get me wrong. It's not that it's not powerful. It's just I don't use it. So it was just, to me, too much stuff on the screen. And so he's like, well, let me take a look at it. And in the classic Maestrith way, he can't let stuff, when he gets interested in something, he just goes to town on it. So so let me show you what he has written. Let me exit both of the exit that one, and I don't think I'll just relaunch it. So apps, see, so this next one, actually, let me go in here. So this is, I'm calling it Find and Click. So Maestrith did all the work. I gave inputs on what I thought was more intuitive and not intuitive. So don't get me wrong. I'm not any sort of the brains behind the programming on this, but I like the abilities it has with it. So as with FineText, there's no local image needed. It's really fast and easy to create a new script. It runs very fast. It can work off. You can say which one you want to find. The other tool, you can go in after you realize which one, but I don't think in that one, there's no way to know which one is the fifth one. It doesn't show you, right? So let's say you had a bunch of numbers that were all 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and you wanted the fourth one, the fourth instance of the one, you would have to count. But even then, what if it's somewhere else on the screen, right? You don't know which one is which index, so you'd have to work through it. I guess you could use the coordinates, and then later, oh no, it highlights them, but it doesn't give you a number.
Yeah.
So anyway, this by default, and Jackie corrected me on this one, and actually on the FineText, sorry, the image search as well, that you need to use negative numbers to search on other screens. Is that right, Jackie?
Yeah, it depends on how your screen, multiple screens are set up. If, let's say, you have an extra screen to the left of your main screen, the one you select as the main screen, most of the time people select the one in front of them, and then they might have a screen to the left, or they might have a screen to the right, or they might have both. But what Windows does is that any screen to the left of your main screen, your primary screen, will get negative coordinates. So if you use the standard, what the example of AutoHotkey gives you for image search, it would search from 0, 0 to screen width, screen height. That would be a standard way of putting it.
What would it make of that?
It would probably give the second screen negative, whatever, minus a lot on the y-axis, right?
Yeah.
And so you would have minus, who knows? I don't know the size of your screens, but maybe minus 1080 on the two. And whatever the width of them would be, 1920, minus 1920, something like that.
Yeah.
So again, that would be your new 0, just as a mental note. So
anyway, regardless of, they can handle them, but how you get the coordinates isn't intuitive and readily available, which it'd be easy to add to, at least to the FineText, right? Of just saying, like, you want to search all your monitors or just what your main monitor, right? And just have the computer program go get it.
Yeah, I recently saw someone on the forum actually post an extra function. He had made kind of a wrapper for FineText, where the thing I think he focused on was this exact issue with it now saying search from 0, 0, whereas in his first version, the first one he posted, he had said from minus 150,000 and minus 100. So he had just made a ridiculously large negative number as the starting point, and that of course slowed down the search significantly for people. So it was kind of a pro and a con, I'd say, compared to which example he gave, and then people expecting it to work, and then it stopped.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you that. Could you just pick a big low number and a big high number, and then you don't have to worry about it? But apparently, it still actually slows down the script. So yeah, we wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, depending on whatever. I know that recently, with the most recent Windows update on my end, Windows did something with the actual screen area. So I'm not sure if it would actually start the detecting of pixels in minus 15,000 if you said that, but it might. Because if it just, what's happening behind the scenes is that AutoHotkey is making a buffer, a pixel buffer of a specific size. And then it just looks through all of them. And so if you make the size that big, of course, it will have to look through all of them.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah. So, and if you extend your search area with 15,000 times 15,000 extra pixels, even though the computer can do 100 in a millisecond, it would still have to actually use 1.5 seconds to do it or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know, that was the other thing that it drove Maestrith nuts, but I didn't personally care that much. But when you would launch FineText, you'd launch it, and it actually took a while for the screen to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was drawing individual pixels at a time of what you did, and that was part of it. So his tool, let me go ahead and, for that matter, let me just launch it from scratch. So it's pretty fast. And let's get back into here. So it's different in how it's used. If you want to like move the mouse or left click or something, you use F1. So I'm going to move my mouse over here. Actually, I got to make sure it's active. So it's active. And now hit F1. And now what I do is I move it close, but then what I do is after I get it close, I stop looking at my mouse and I look back at Find and Click. And so I can get really precisely, you know, it's zoomed in on it, right? So I'm going to hit F1 again, and then I move away. This way, if you were trying to activate a window, I can still left click a window and pop it up, right? And so that's why I think actually Fayu, that's why he moved his to the right click, because sometimes you want to be able to left click something to bring up a menu and then capture it. And so this gets around that, right? So now I can say I want, okay. Now, if I want, I can come in here and I can hone in. And what's cool is that this will actually stay here. And I can say display matches. And so notice over here, it found this one, but it found these others, right? And they're numbered. And so I can just say, oh, I want to move my mouse there, and let's move it to the fourth match. Let me do the test again. Oops, oh, I should have said display matches. Now we know which one's the 4. So see where the 4 is? Now when I hit test, it moves it to there. So this can very quickly just say, oh, I want to, you know, how many are there of it in case there's more than one? You know, I can quickly say, move me to the 4th or let's go back to the 1st and test it. And now it'll go up to the 1st one, right? And but what if I wanted to double click it? So I can left click and double click it. I don't know what it's going to do on the 1, but let's test it. So if I still came over here and double clicked, I don't know how it got everything. That's interesting. Weird. But it did it.
Maybe your cursor was placed at the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah. So so if you're wanting to click, this is what you do. Now let's say you wanted to nest it, and you wanted to click somewhere, and then after you click, then you wanted to actually what you know. Let's do the test that chat. Maestrith and I just finished. I shouldn't say finished, but we were working on this like an hour ago. So we're kind of. I'm still learning it too. So these are steps. I'm going to delete that step. And now I'm going to say, I'm going to want to enter text in my Google search, right? So F2, if I want to send text, I'm going to hit F2. Now say, what do you want to identify to anchor it? Well, this is what I'm going to identify to anchor it. Sometimes it's good to test. Oh, I forgot. I had to click again. There we go. Is it done now? Set to, oh, I gotta set, notice it's telling me, I'm just not reading. So it says set where the offset where you want to click. So I want it to be in here, and I'll hit F2 again. Okay, now it's done. Now display matches. It didn't find it. So let's try this. We're still working on like what makes sense here. There, now it found it. So it did better with this than the whole thing, and we're still trying to work through like that. I want to send hello world to that. Now let's test it. So bam, it found this and then moved over to my offset and pasted in hello world. But let's say we actually wanted a multi-step, and now we wanted to click this button. So I'm going to add another step where I do a click. So I'm going to do F1. Well, I gotta be on it first. So F1. I'm going to come in here, F1 again, and move away, and F1 again. Now it's saying what, and actually let's just, since we know that was a problem before, let's do this. I'm going to test this one. Oh, it tested the whole thing. Sorry. Like I said, I'm still getting used to it. I should have done display matches. So there's that one. I can come back up in here, and there's that one, right? So each of these, but when I did the test, it does the two together. So it puts in the text, hits enter, right? And I'm done. You can also say, wait for a given window to show up. So you can click this, or sorry, F3 or click this, and it'll wait for a given window to appear. And that way, if it hasn't appeared yet, you can wait for it to be visible before it actually does all the stuff. As like in the other Fayused version, you can once you have the function in your library, I can export just that and then put it into my code, and that's all it is. It actually puts them all into one thing, and then this won't run because right now I don't have that library in my I don't have the function, or I shouldn't say function because it's no longer just one, but the function's in my library. But it's a pretty quick, easy way to do multi-step things. Again, the other two tools don't have anything in there to actually click anything or send text to it. And now this has all the things combined. I'll be posting this code later today or tomorrow on the website. So when I send out the email for everyone that attended or was signed up for it, you'll get an email link to it. I'm going to make it where it's on my website and it's free to use, but please don't post it like to the forum, right? It's use it all you want, but just keep the source code on my site. Did anyone have any questions? Is it also possible to just get the X and Y position? Well, you could. I would say for that simple, he had written that initially, and we could easily go back and do that. But it's we don't need all the other bells and whistles. I'll have to ask him. We'd have to make that as I don't know where I'd classify that. I'm just trying to think of where I would put that. Of just get the coordinates. But he initially wrote the first version that would do just that. And then I was like, well, yeah, but I'd like to be able to, click something there or send text there. And so then he wrapped everything in this. So I know inside of his functions, obviously he has what you're asking. But for that matter, I would just say use FineText, right? It's perfect for that because there's nothing wrong with that function. It's fast and reliable. And if you're comfortable doing it, right? It's just a lot of people aren't comfortable writing loops and writing steps and knowing that like, hey, it just moved the mouse. And like, well, that's all FineText does is give you those coordinates. You need to do everything else after that.
Yeah, and again, most of these things could be done in multiple ways. And Fayu, who made the FineText, he made it into, I think it's made in C, a C code that actually does the searching, that loops over all the pixels and decides which are the correct ones. And that's also what the GDI plus ImageSearch does. So most of these things are user-defined functions, and you could just as easily, without using these GUI tools, do the same thing with less. So it really depends on what you want to do. If you want an easy tool to do a quick search and click something, then by all means use a GUI tool like this. But if you have a specific need, like asking for, I just want the coordinates, that's what the main function already does.
Yeah.
Then use the main function. And so yeah, I'd say narrow it down to what you need, and go and look for that specific part of it.
I'd add on to that. It's funny because I had a conversation with Maestrith about this. He had initially had a tree view here where he was saving the images so you could come back in and look at what you had done before. And I said, look, I use this for one and done things, right? I use it when I'm in a hurry and like the web scraping. I'm on a page where I'm having trouble triggering an event listener or something like that. So it's onesie-twosie things that I never go back and do again. It's something I'm in a hurry for. And I think, Jackie, to your point, if you just want the coordinates and you know what you're doing, there are better ways to do that, right? Much more efficient, faster ways.
Yeah, and some of the things with FineText, which is also the main part of what's doing the searching in your tool here, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Is that this searching could most likely be done just as well by using the already build out GDI Plus library. The only thing that we are unsure about from Fayuse is these gray to 2 is what does it actually do to the pixel colors. I'm unsure exactly what they do because I haven't actually read what it does to it. But yeah, when you click gray to 2, you get a black and white image, but it isn't a correct interpretation of what's actually happening, because you're not just doing a black and whiting. You're actually, he's first deciding which colors are within threshold, and then as you can see, gray threshold here is 69, 96. That's the correct number. 96. So what you're doing there, Joe, isn't actually affecting the gray to 2 at all, because yeah, exactly. Now you have 0. But if you change the 96 to something else, and then click gray to 2, yeah, you'd need to change the 96 to something.
Okay.
Not just blank. If you changed it to, let's say, 50, and then click gray to 2, then you can see here it becomes way more allowant of what's actually the text, because all of the small color variations are now being acted upon. So there are 2 separate things. The color similarity is only for the first button, the color to 2, and the gray threshold is only for the second button, the gray to 2.
Yeah, he needs some boxes to group those. That would really help.
Yeah.
And I know it says color similarity, right? But still, anyway, sorry.
Exactly. And I did look at the Fayuse source code, the C code for his M code, and he's doing the same thing as AutoHotkey, looping over the pixels. Same thing as GDI Plus, looping over the pixels. It's just a matter of whichever functionality you use to do it. So here it is, what do you actually do with your source? And he has 2 functions here. He has color to 2 and he has gray to 2. And then it's stored. Do you remember from talking with Maestrit what it is he actually does? Is it a 64-bit conversion that's done on the image data?
I think it was a base 64. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, exactly.
I believe he said that. Yeah.
And that's how you're actually make the image into a variable you can put in your script. It's a base 64 conversion of the pixel data. So yeah.
And is that what is represented?
It is, yes.
In the
bits.
In the bits. Okay. Yeah, he initially wrote something different and then realized the stuff that Fayu had done was pretty good. So I think he left it as what he had done.
Yeah.
That one. So I should add his credits apparently to. We borrowed from that on that one bit.
Yeah, for the most part, this performing action is like a wrapper for Fayu's FineText, right? Kind
of. Yeah, I mean, we removed, I'd say, like 85% of what was in there, but still, the core part of the what you mentioned earlier when it's running
the M code.
Yeah, the M code, that is the same. Yes.
Okay.
But man, when you looked at his newer version, is this the new? Yeah, this is the newer one. Like the stuff that he had built into it was the which a lot of it's not even in the GUI, right? But you can save letters. I think I was talking about this the other day, right? You can start creating an A and a B and a C and a D, and then later do like OCR with it. There were so many things in it. I'm like, I'm never going to use, any of this stuff. It's just extra stuff that I will never use. It doesn't mean it's wrong, right? I'm not saying that. It's just stuff that I wouldn't use.
Yeah, yeah, and to me, one of the things is that here you're building upon some M code that Feiyu he made,
Yeah.
and I tried to and not because I'm the best at actually reading C code, but I had a fair chance at actually reading it, and there is some of the things in there because the code has been is it not sterilized? I don't minified or whatever it's called. So everything is one-letter variables, so it becomes quite hard to actually determine exactly what he does everywhere. But yeah, I'd say it seems very similar to both what AutoHotkey does and what GDI Plus does. So again, what FineText seems to be is just an easy to use GUI to capture pixels and manipulate them to gray tones or within some kind of color threshold, whatever that is. And you have cleaned it up a bit with your version and removed some of the what do you call it? Some of the
Functionality.
yeah, you've removed some of the functionality that wasn't well explained.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense to remove it when you don't know what something does. Yeah, you shouldn't use it. But yeah.
I also, it's a stupid thing, but this button, I think it shows up behind it. Yeah, is it you can change it in a couple lines in FineText, but it's not in the GUI. I don't know why he didn't build that in there. But here, if I want to change the size of my capture area, right, it's part of the GUI.
Yeah, I remember having to actually change the source code of FineText to actually change the capturing area. Yeah, that's again.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just he built a good GUI tool for getting and doing the stuff. I would have had a button saying change size of capture area, right? It would have been easy.
I'd say that one thing that you could say is that he has been extremely lucky. I think it's kind of a fluke that what happened to his FineText. He must have found a good name, and the right people found it and started talking about it. Because for me, when looking at it, because I already do so much image searching and stuff like that, it doesn't seem as something that is worth all the hype.
Well, but Jackie, I think it's because that's where the difference between you and I, right? You're a much better programmer. So for you, he's not offering anything that you really even care about, right? You're like, oh, I can do all this stuff. For me, I'm like, holy hell, I can use this tool in like 30 seconds, find the image I want and build something. I just wish it had the clicking part, right? Or take action on it. But that's why I wrote those hot strings. So I wrote a wrapper for FineText that would send in, after it would move my mouse to it, I could click it, I could double click it, I could send text to it. It wasn't amazingly reliable, but it wasn't terrible. The stuff Maesrit did, he built it to use control clicking and to get the active window of what you were on at the time. And so it should be much more robust than what I had done. But yeah, anyway, Jackie, I'm not to cut you off. I'm just saying, like, for noobs, like a tool like this is really helpful, right? It's just, he had all the stuff in here that he didn't explain, or at least it's kind of ironic, right? If you're that advanced, I don't know if you need the GUI. And if you're not that advanced, that was why I wanted just something to simplify. It's kind of like I did with the, I forget what I called it, the control simple spy. I got rid of a lot of the stuff that the other tool had was good stuff, but like it just confused me. So I like making things simpler.
Yeah, and I also get that, but I'm also just saying that there's already been a lot of users who have made image search GUIs where all of what you can do, setting variations, editing the image that you had, closely looking at the pixels, doing all of this stuff. And that's why I'm just saying that
Okay.
he has hit some kind of lucky streak with getting the attention that he has gotten with FineText. And I think that it's both a naming thing and the right people finding it and making it into something. And I'm not saying it's bad, because I'm just happy that people are getting an
Sure.
easy to use
Yeah.
image search tool.
No.
It's just he hasn't. It doesn't seem as if what he has done code-wise
Yeah.
is much different from what has already been done multiple times before. So I'm just saying that, yeah, he made an M code function that loops over the pixels and checks them for if they're a match. And that's what all of the other tools are already doing. So I'm saying that what he did was he has built in the edit GUI. He has made those two functions gray to 2 and gray to color. And he has made the base 64-bit encoding of the image source. So I'm just saying those are the three things that this one has that makes it so easy to use. And you could probably build a tool without even using his M code if you wanted to. So I'm saying we already have all of the things. He has just collected them in the right order, and that's it. And I think that building upon it and making find and click is a good way of using what he already did.
Yeah, I think some people will find it handy when they, again, when they want to just click something quickly or send text to an edit thing, right? It's super. Once you get the hang of it, it's still. I kept wanting to click things, and so my first nature was to highlight it and then go click something, and it's like, oh, I have to use either F1 or F2 to activate and to isolate. So that took me 5 minutes to get used to. After that, I'm like, okay, I get it, and I can nest it, or I can do multiple, which is nice.
Yeah. The first time I saw this done really well was actually in the MacroCreator that Pullover made. It has a full GUI for editing your source and storing it and testing it, and of course, because it's the MacroCreator, you can click the found locations and send text to it and all of that stuff, right? So it's just a more massive tool, but it has all of the user friendliness that people usually wish for. It's just, again, this one is cut down in size, and it has a more intuitive name, I think.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people, when they hear of the FineText, they are thinking, oh, it's OCR, and it's one of those things. It's really more. We were talking about this earlier, Jackie. It's finding like a pixel pattern or an image type of thing is a better way to slate, because it can be anything. It doesn't have to be text, right?
No, and I'm sure from what I read in the topic and stuff, I think he actually meant it as an OCR tool for himself. Whereas instead of going in and trying to learn Tesseract or whatever, he wanted to build his own font library. This is the exact text that I know I'm looking for. It always looks like this. I'll just cut it into pieces, 26 pieces of letters, and then I can do perfect OCR. And he made a great tool for himself. And if you look at his first code, it looks like a tool for himself. Just because it's scrambled all over and it has all of that subtitle functions and all of that stuff in it. So I'm pretty sure it was just he wanted to share a tool that he had been happy with, and I'm pleased that so many people have actually found a use for it.
One of the things he added to the newer version was the ability to check. I could come in here and I could get this and I could get this, and then I could basically say, allow the distance between them to be flexible. So it controls for, I can look for this, and then is this to the right of it, like regardless of how close it is. Would that have to do with the OCR type kind of thing? Is that why he would do that? Because I just didn't get in my head like why that was important.
Yeah, I'd say that has to do with the OCR part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Just the text can have more white space between it. Sure.
Yeah, and it really got back to me of reminding myself when we talk about OCR, the computer is going and finding these things and then puts them together and says, when these things are together, this is what it means, right? And so that's what you'd be doing with his script. Oh, I got look for this letter and this letter and this letter and this letter. When you find that, that means back, and then go take this action, right? Yeah. But it's not a translator. I'm not going to use it to say, oh, take this image and convert it to text for me like a book, right?
No, you'd need to build an entire script around searching for all the letters of whatever text you have. So if you have a clean, plain line that's totally straight, and you tell it to start by looking for one of these letters at most to the leftmost one, and as soon as it finds one, it will decide, oh, that's an F.
Yeah.
And then it will start to look for everything it has in its library, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on and so forth, to the right of that. And as soon as it finds one, it will just, oh, that's an A, fair. And so on and so forth, just like OCR would do. And you just need to have the 26 letters in image form. Yeah.
And so, okay. And then it looks for when there's enough space, we'll just say, okay, that's the end when you're actually translating it, right?
Yeah, it's probably a matter of finding where there's a word boundary. Would be my guess. So if this white space becomes more than 10 pixels, it's most likely the end of the word or whatever it might be, right? That's just me guessing. So it can find a word on its own without you defining how many letters there are in the word.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing with the, when you did which we should have mentioned also, you led a webinar for us on doing like an image search, but shrinking the images down greatly, and then even then, grayscaling them, right? Was that right? It sounds right.
Yeah, the one I had was finding the similarity between two images. So if you have a library of images and you want to compare it to other images because you want to find similar images, that's what I did. And yes, what it does is it takes the source image, shrinks it down to quite a small size. It actually does. It uses a GGI algorithm to decide how to emphasize the color of the shrunken image. And then you tell it which image to compare it to. And then it does the same algorithm to it and shrinks it down. So instead of comparing two images of, let's say, HD, you'd instead compare 16 by 16 pixels. So the comparison is done much quicker than you would usually do. But because of the algorithm and the way the images are shrunk, you still get quite a good reliability on likeliness. So if you have two exact images within reason, you'll get an exact match on those. And if you have an image where only, let's say, a few pixels on a single item has changed, then you will get a 99% match. It actually works quite well. It's interesting, but it's used to compare larger image samples to each other. It's not really meant to find an image on screen.
Okay, gotcha. I was going to say that was it. Yeah. So if anyone's interested, back in June of last year, we did the image comparison detection / detection. But yeah, I get your point. It was comparing them. And then the other one was on the OCR that you did, which was, I thought that was after it, but I don't.
I think it must have been after,
No,
but I'm not sure.
I know I posted the page, but I'll go back and double check. Maybe I forgot to add it to the, because I have to keep this thing updated. Look, no, we took a month off at one point, but I'll make a note to myself to. My bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did the OCR one with Tesseract, right? Where I found some code on the forum and adapted it and used that to make an OCR tool using the Tesseract library. I've actually forgotten the name of the person who made what was it? VIS2, I think the function was called. Maybe I could look it up and say his name. So as to not.
Is a hound.
It's a hound. That's probably right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, someone posted it, or did you just remember?
No, it's on the it's on our, like I said, I posted the webinar.
Mm-hmm.
It was we didn't call it OCR. We said getting text from programs.
There's probably a more in-depth one where the OCR just wasn't part of it.
No, well, it's just the name of the webinar was get text from programs. When I searched for OCR, that wasn't on the title page. But anyway,
no.
So what I was saying was on that was after that webinar, when you led that and showed us, that was when I went back into my screen clipping tool, and let me see if I'm trying to think if I have something here. So this is an image. Let's see how it'll work on this. So I'll get this, and now it's highlighted, but if I hit Control T, notice in the bottom right, it's going to perform OCR, and then it messed up some, but delete clear steps, right? So that's on my clipboard. So because it had this other stuff, but that was a cool one of being able to do OCR, but that's using the Tesseract thing, not FineText version.
No, yeah, exactly. And the thing with Tesseract is if you get into fonts that are unusual or maybe are a bit obscure or fussy or has a lot of background noise or whatever it might be, Tesseract can really have a lot of errors. Whereas if you go in and take the images of each letter yourself, you will know that it will only match that N when it's an N. It won't all of a sudden decide that it's an M. That's an error that Tesseract could make. Or if you have an O, Tesseract might decide that it's a 0, depending on it. It guesses, and then it weighs the whatever it decides, and if something near it makes it think that it's an O, and it really is a 0, you have really no control with Tesseract. Whereas if there really is a visual distinction between a 0 and an O, with using FineText, you would always get the correct answer. That's the thing.
Before we because we're past our 1 hour, and thanks Dale was just reminding me, but I didn't know, do other people, does anyone have any questions to this? Do you have other questions not related to this? my question is, are we going to have a part 2, or are we just going to wrap up now and be done? I'm happy to have a part 2. I just wanted to, if not, we'll just continue recording and then stop here in a couple minutes. But if we want to have questions, or if anyone has anything to share, let's pause so the recordings are broken up and then go into the... Yeah, the link's not ready yet, Brad. Like I said, I got this like an hour ago, and I haven't posted it to my site yet. Okay. Yeah, we'll send it out once everything's done. But did anybody have any questions on this, or have anything they want to share, anything they're working on, anything they're stuck on? All right, let's go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll start it back up, and we'll do some troubleshooting.
Sounds good.
Where? Stop share. Where's my stupid stop record button? There we go. Let's see.